First off, I'm pretty humbled to be here and asked to speak today. I want to say thanks to all you guys that bought tickets that are here supporting us in this event. We're hoping to build on this and bring more things in the future. A little bit of background on me. I'm a chiropractor by trade with a bachelor's in human biology. So my background is pretty deep in anatomy, biomechanics, physiology, kind of understand the body as a whole. And in 2002, opened my own practice in Norman, and through a lot of failures over the years, I just progressed as a clinician and try to be better. I think my traditional training was really good from a structural component, understanding the body, using my hands to try to help people get their body back in alignment. And when you start working with athletes or people that move, you know, they feel good for a day or two, and then it's like everything goes right back. So, you know, I realized that my knowledge base had to continue and to understand movement, because movement really is medicine. Motion is lotion. That's the best thing we can do for our joints. And you know, then when you're working with athletes, there's a big gap between what I learned in school from a therapy-based model, bird dogs, clamshells, whatever it might be, to performance. And just like if I'm working with somebody and I release them, my week 8 needs to match up with week 1 in here, and to me there's a pretty big gap there a lot of times. And so I've tried to force myself to understand and learn how to connect those dots a little bit better, because I think there's a big need for that. So, and I've learned a lot from strength coaches is really what's helped me piece that together. A lot of the regressions and things that you guys use has been really helped me over the last few years. 2016, I went to Phoenix. This is a group, they have over 100 Olympic level athletes there. They teach a performance therapy program, which is kind of an area that I'm trying to bring more attention to, get more therapists to learn this stuff. One of the few takeaway things I learned from them is that when you're out there, therapist, coach, you don't really know who you're talking to sometimes, because they all understand mechanics really well. They understand how the body moves. The therapist, the main principle they teach is the athlete, coach, therapist triad, which kind of builds on what everybody's been talking today about, the athlete-centered approach. And so they took us out on the field, on the track. Athlete, coach, therapist, we're all together. We're watching the athlete warm up, and it's not just lollygagging around, people going through the motions. They're coaching the warm-up, and they're watching these athletes to see how they're moving. And we're all having a conversation about the athletes telling us what they're feeling, what we're seeing. As a therapist with our background, you know, I'm really trying to hone my skills on creating that motion by manual therapy inputs, be it my hands, needles, acupuncture needles, whatever. And there's this window of opportunity. You always get this improvement in range of motion. So they decided to take that approach and watch how the athlete's moving, do that input right there on the field, and then you see the translation to see, was that the right thing that we needed to do? Because you don't always know what you're doing. And in the traditional model, a lot of times it's like you see the athlete, you work on them, give them something to try. They may come back 2 weeks later and you don't even really know, never talk to the coach, you never really know what happened. And so I really like what they're doing there. So you're kind of all getting in that environment, and we're all having a conversation about what's best for the athlete. Here, sport is the art of movement. Our job is the improvement of that movement. I thought that was a pretty powerful quote. You know, movement is the common language of all of us. We're all, even in other sports, movement is where it's at. I think strength coaches and coaches in general have a really good idea of what those movements should look like. A lot of times they just don't know how to fix it. And it'd be like, you know, if I gave all of you guys a a counterfeit dollar bill, you could probably all tell me which one was counterfeit. You just may not know how to explain it. And so that's where we're all trying to work together to connect those dots. So this picture is actually a video. When I was out there at Altus, I took a video of this guy long jumping. And he's a good example of how this model can really help elevate an athlete's performance. This is Greg Rutherford he's a British athlete. He's in the the long jump, sorry. So I was just kind of doing a slow motion video of his performance there. I actually got to watch a live meet. And that was another thing they taught, that to really slow the movements down, studying movement and looking at movement screens, the best movement screen is the actual performance. That's really where all the transfer needs to happen. So to do that, you just kind of watch everything in slow motion and see where. And I was blown away to see, because I was like, most athletes can't even get into this position. And that's him at the end of the long jump. So prior to 2012, he was a banged-up athlete, had a nagging hamstring injury, was a high performer, didn't know if he was going to be able to keep competing. He worked with Coach Paff of Altus and Jerry Ramagita, their lead performance therapist. They started this model working with him. Greg was the gold medalist in the 2012 long jump. So pretty good testament to what the power of all those minds working together to accomplish something. So kind of like Will said, I think he said foundation dictates function, well, shape dictates function. So square tires don't roll. I mean, they do, but not very well. So when we're going to talk about movement, that would be a pretty inefficient way of driving that vehicle. These are my two daughters. Caroline on the left, she's probably 3 in that picture. Lily on the right is probably a year and a half. You know, I didn't have to cue them to get into that position. I mean, I don't think any of us probably has a squat that good on the right. There's maybe a couple in here. Posture should be reflexive. You know, like I said, I neutral spine, whatever you want to say. I mean, on the one on the right, I could drop a sheet of glass through her spine, ear, shoulder, hip, all that's in good alignment. And this is just a result of their environment, of how they move every day. This is not, like I said, I didn't tell them to squat. This is just a position they access all the time. So their bodies are able to get into these positions. And I think one of our hurdles as coaches and working with athletes is trying to get that person into those positions gets tough, because we spend so much time in these seated position. We got phones, we eat dinner, some of us sleep in this position. We've got a lot of mobility issues there. You got tight hip flexors, tight hamstrings, tight pecs. Everything on the front of the body is short and tight, and everything on the back side of the body is lengthened. And so this is some of the things we're up against. SAID principle is basically specific adaptation to imposed demands. It's what, you know, we got to ask ourselves, what are we trying to adapt our body to do? And if it's, 3 hours a week of trying to fix it all in here, that's just not enough. So we got to be aware of how we're sitting, changing positions, get on the ground more, get into these movements more often. So there's just kind of an example of what the two might look like there. Better posture on the right. And the reason I'm talking about posture is because a lot of good things happen when we get into a good posture. Even going back to what Will and Dr. Clinton Lewis were talking about there, is even posture makes you feel better. I mean, we all visualize a depressed individual and, tell them to stick their chest up a little bit, get their head right, and immediately you just feel better. So, but posture is also the foundation of speed, and this is another big element that Tip's going to kind of expand on that a little bit more as we go here. But the body's in a good position to create a lot of force there, and kind of echo on why it's so important to establish those good postures. So the body's in a good position to produce large amounts of force, in addition to accepting and absorbing and returning elastic energy. The alignment is good. Good mechanics allow the joints to manage stress in their neutral anatomic position. And it's just less energy that we have to use to move. So a lot of good things happen when we line things up that way. And so me as a therapist, kind of what started to open my mind was start working backwards from these injuries. I'm seeing people that were, maybe their posture wasn't very good, their mechanics weren't very good. This is why they were getting injured all the time. And then it kind of clicked, well, the same things I'm doing with these people to get them out of pain are also what's going to make you perform better. So that's why it's important to work on these things, because you're gonna less interruption in your training, you're going to be able to handle those loads more efficiently, and you're going to improve performance. So you're reducing injury and you're improving performance. Here's the athletic position. Once again, shape dictates function. In my opinion, there's a lot of athletes I see, especially at the high school level, that just really can't access this position very well. We see a lot of kids kind of moving around on the field, and with that poor posture, they can't get into their hips. I see people with chronic low back pain. They can't get into this position. They're moving through their spines. And so this is a really good position. I think it's good to train. You can handle a lot of loads. Jim would probably tell you that's a good position. They're training Olympic lifting. They're kind of building that foundation. It's important to be able to get into those hips and not put all and to manage those forces better. So I think that's kind of some of the low-hanging fruit for us as coaches and therapists, to educate our athletes to be able to own that position and accept force really well in that position. Kind of reiterating what Coach K talked about on Plan B. We all have a plan everybody has a plan until they get punched in the mouth. And, there's a lot of truth to that, like we talked about with coaches. That was another big takeaway I took from being out there at Altus. They were really good at Plan B. A lot of times you'll see an athlete get injured, and the doctor or whoever will just kind of take them out of that environment, tell them just to lay off for a while, quit training, let it heal. But there's really a lot of things we can do, and the better we build our arsenal of having a good Plan B. Of course, you got to have a good Plan A, but being able to roll with those punches, being able to adapt, that's what I'm learning to do as well in the rehab field. And so this little chart here is kind of based off that concept, because I think a lot of times we look at this one down here on the bottom right, and that's our only menu item for a squat pattern maybe. Of course, there's a lot of other things we could plug in here, but, if you can't back squat, we're just going to take that one off the table, and in my opinion, I think we could regress. We could find somewhere on this continuum here that they can do, because movement is just a continuum of movement. If we had an NFL player in here working out, and we had him doing some front squats, and then we had him out here doing some sprints, Tip had him doing some sprints. A regression of that movement is if we had an 80-year-old grandmother walk in here that wanted to train, we could have her sit on this chair right here, do some squats from the chair to stand up. We could handle her kettlebell, 10-pound, 15-pound kettlebell, have her walk down there, walk back. That's the same movement. But yet some of us may have not even attempted that because we weren't really thinking Plan B. We were just looking Plan A, trying to make everybody fit into that. And, you just can't put a square peg in a round hole. So we've got to be able to take a step back, use our tool set, and use some of this stuff. I mean, say we got an athlete with a sprained ankle, I think they could probably do an assisted squat, holding on to that squat rack there, and just kind of loading it in a controlled manner that's pain-free, and they're gonna get back to movement a lot faster. So a lot of ways we can use this. And then that quote at the top, Strength training is coordination training against resistance. And when I heard that read that really kind of resonated with me, that a lot of times we just think it's about moving the weight or how much weight can we move, but really we're training these movement patterns and we're trying to get them to transfer on the field to really own that athletic position. They should really be able to master that squat, that deadlift, that hinge pattern. And we want that to become reflexive, just like we talked about in the beginning with my kids. We want that squat pattern to be so patterned, such a part of their life that we don't have to coach it so much because their body just can get into those positions. So, like I said, this is just a template for example, but hopefully it'll give you some ideas, because we all have our own green beans that, like Coach K said, we bring to the potluck dinner, and many of you probably maybe your wheels are turning of other things you can do with some of your athletes right now, with some of the things that you have, other tools in your toolbox that you're just maybe not thinking outside the box so much. So in summary, I just kind of wanted to hit on the idea of that athlete, coach, therapist triad of get everybody communicating. Once again, kind of we're echoing what we've all been saying all day. Communication is key. Your shape dictates function. So being able to get into those positions before we try to maybe sometimes load those positions, regress them a little bit, own it, get the coordination down, and good things are going to happen. And then just building your arsenal of having a good plan B and being able to roll with the punches. Don't always think you got to do plan A. Have some other options there. And then kind of on the theme of movement is medicine, and why I'm so passionate about it, because not only is it important for athletics, it's also very important for our longevity as human beings, because we're all human beings. We all want to have a good quality of life. And there was a study some of you may have heard in Brazil a few years ago. Those that were 50 years and older, they did a sit-to-stand test, and the individuals that had to use more body parts to get to the ground, their life expectancy was decreased. So if you had to use your hand and your knee and to squat down to the ground and come back up, you were dying faster. What's that? So I was going to have everybody kind of get up and try this, but I should have warmed up or foam rolled or something before we did this. So basically the gist of the test, you cross your feet, you go down with control to the ground. Getting back up's the hard part, and then you got to get back up. So, I'll be 42 years old this year, so I'm trying to practice what I preach. And the first time I did this a couple years ago, I couldn't do it. I got about here, and then I thought my knees were going to break, my ankles were going to break. So, to me, that's where that piece really needs to be there. And so, kind of want that to marinate and resonate with you guys. And the beauty of this test is the test is the exercise. So, once again, if you can't do this test, maybe go to that big plyo box over there and just kind of go down and do some reps there. Then maybe go to the next one, go down, and that's kind of what I did. And over time, then just to the ground and back up. So that's about all I have to say. I think Coach Tip's going to kind of take what I've done. He's going to build on that and show you more of the meat and potatoes of what these guys do here, and leave you with some more good information. So thanks for having me, guys.